CO. Hello, I am Cade Thomas, and welcome to this new episode of Double Feature Movie Club. It's our 23rd episode, and I am joined this week by Ava and Diane. How are you guys doing?
Great, Cade.
Great. Perfect.
How are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I haven't had the chance to. I'm sitting in a slightly different location than I typically am because I haven't had the chance to move around our studio just yet from our last time. So I'm on the couch that you love, Diane.
Oh, the couch. Couch is like almost on the floor, Ava.
Mm-hmm. It's a low couch.
Futon? Is it a futon?
It is a futon, yes.
Almost
pretty close to the floor.
Well, I told Cade the next time I come to work in his studio, I'm bringing my own chair.
Well, you got that to look forward to, I guess, audience.
Yeah. I almost could not get off the couch. It was one of those. Let me sleep here. Mm. Yeah.
And it was all worth it, right? Because of our quality time that we had.
Quality time together.
Well, our podcast listeners may have noticed that we skipped an episode. We did not put that episode out. You can watch it as a stream. If you want to get that episode, it'll be the Forever Lost episode is what we'll call it. We'll add it to the lore. They'll have to watch it on the YouTube, Ava on the YouTube. Ava had pointed out in our stream that our audio wasn't great. I was like, oh well, that's odd because we're recording off of a really a nice setup we have. I was like, but we'll just keep boosting it on our end. Turns out the audio board was not connected to the computer, and we were just recording off of the computer audio, and that's why we were all awful audio.
What? And I would have kept saying something, except it didn't seem like it went over well when I said it the first time. So I just let it be.
Because I think you were like, yeah, I mean, it's slightly better.
Yeah, a little better.
Yeah, because we did make it louder, but slightly, as much as we could. But it was not the audio that was obviously necessary. And so that I will take responsibility for that, Diane. Even though Diane was at the board, and the board was fine. It just wasn't plugged into the computer. Which was...
I used sound effects and everything. It was pretty wonderful. It's too bad you couldn't hear it.
No, I never heard the sound effects, and it took me a minute to figure out that that's what you were doing. And then I'm like, oh, it must be just for the podcast version or something. But I was like, what's the sound? I want to know.
Yeah, well, so that will live in the history, the Forever Lost 22nd episode of Double Feature Movie Club that was good in our ears. We could hear it because we're hooked up to the audio board.
I'm glad I saw it live. People have to join live. Make sure they see it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So I do apologize to our avid listeners and people for that. Next time we're in the studio is supposed to be for a better quality experience, but that did not happen this time.
There's even soundproofing. I mean, it's an amazing studio. I have to tell you, Abe, I've never been in a studio quite like it.
Quite like it. Oh, okay. That makes it sound like it's kind of not a compliment. Like it's kind of kind of sounds like
Ava and I've been in a studio together, Kansas City, outside Kansas City once.
A radio studio.
Our friend, the radio DJ guy, and we did a commercial for him. And your studio is more as equipment, as much if not more equipment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so
very cool.
Well, okay. That was there more to that story? You just went to a radio station.
We had to drive a long way compared to going to your house, of course.
Yeah.
I have to leave all those stories to Diane to give a go ahead on. Just I can't tell you why, because then that would
Okay.
you know,
Be part of the reason for not talking about it, right?
right.
But this is not our first foray
Okay.
into the internet on air world.
Okay.
How's that? Yeah.
Well,
We
perfect.
met on the internet. We met on the internet.
Well, then we did a commercial for an
Yep.
internet radio
Yeah.
show. We were guests.
I vaguely remember that. Wow. Okay.
Yes, we were the voice talent.
Actually, what I remember, well, I remember a lot of things from our trips together, but the biggest thing, Cade, was she let me drive her car.
I know that never happens.
And I
Jennifer's the
found
only
out
other
later,
person.
like, yeah, that that no one is allowed to drive her car, which I didn't know at the time. So.
Yeah.
Well, that is good. That is.
Yeah, for a long time she was the only one.
Mhm.
But I let Jennifer drive it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
now I'm jealous.
We have a long drive to the trivia from where I live and even further from where Jennifer lives. So she drives to my house and then I drive to the trivia. Well, on the way back, I make her drive. I know.
It's that time now. And I remember, and how much, Diane always talks about Cade not liking animals. Well, we were half asleep. Weren't we half asleep in the car? And all of a sudden Diane swerved. It was very early in the morning, dark, right out. And she just kept saying, I had to swerve to miss the coyote because he looked like a dog.
I did.
Just looked like a dog. I couldn't hit him.
That was weird too, because there was a semi next to us. I will never forget that part. And the coyote ran across in front of us and then turned, kind of froze in the headlights of the semi and came back across.
That would be freaky.
That scared the crap out of me. I thought, I'm going to hit him. There's no way around it. And it would be awful if I did, because he was a big old guy.
Yeah.
But nope, we had a little bit of wheel hop from me hitting the brakes so hard. And of course, that woke everyone up. It was 3:30 in the morning, and we were driving back from Wichita. We did stuff like that that was back in the day when we were young.
Back
we
in
were
the
young,
day,
we had eyesight. We could drive at 3:30 in the morning.
On the
You
road.
don't care, Cade. You don't care. That's okay.
No, it's fine. No,
He's
it's
still trying to figure out the context. Someday we'll have to tell him the context.
If I saw a commercial, I saw, not to change the subject, but I'm going to. I saw a commercial today for the Masked Singer, and they're going to do a Lloyd Webber show.
Andrew Lloyd
his
Webber.
Songs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, how far he's fallen.
Oh,
Well, he's dead now, right?
no, he's not dead.
Andrew Lloyd Webber, didn't he just die?
No, he's not dead.
If he did, it was just.
I thought he was. It was
He just died.
I would say about like 4 months ago.
I don't think so.
Hey Siri,
I didn't hear about it if he did. For some reason I don't.
I think I'm getting someone else mixed up now that I think about it. I think I'm thinking of Stephen Sondheim that died.
Or Frank Lloyd Wright. He died a long time ago. Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yep. Andrew Lloyd is
I think-
still alive.
Yeah, I
He's
got
up
Stephen
there
Sondheim.
before.
That's the one who I.
He's
thought.
not that much older than me. And anytime I see stuff like that where there's somebody who's not that much older than me, I always want to say, boy, they accomplished a lot. I'm doing a podcast, but yeah.
Yes. Well, that's good. Yeah. Andrew Lloyd Webber. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, wasn't he always kind of like a little weird? I mean, like his stuff was like he's had big failures before. People think of obviously Phantom of the Opera and things, but like Cats was
but
huge at
his
some
successes
point.
have been so huge.
Yes.
Well, not just Cats. Evita was huge. Jesus Christ Superstar was huge. I mean, he was huge.
But then you think
He
like
was huge.
Starlight Express was kind of a little bit of a misstep, right? I mean,
I don't know. That ran a long time, I think, in
it
London.
did. Mm-hmm.
But
But most
then
of them
his first
are
show-
kind of looked back. Like if you look back at like Cats and Starlight Express and some of these things like that, it kind of it's very much.
Well, now, wait a minute. Cats was huge. The
Cats
movie was a flop.
yes, Cats was,
huge
but even
for
so,
years.
yes, that is true. But I'm saying that like I think it's kind of looked back as kind of with a little bit of an eye roll. Like it is.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah.
And his most recent show closed. I think that's when I heard him in the news most recently. It didn't last very long. He blamed it on COVID, I think, but it didn't run very long.
Yeah. I was gonna see.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, so he's doing a Masked Singer night.
Well,
Yeah,
is
they're
he
having
or
a Masked
do-
Singer.
Well,
Diane,
his
do you just
music
mean
is. I'd imagine
they're just using his music?
I have no idea. I just saw that and I thought Ava and I need to watch
His stuff
this.
his stuff is hard to sing.
Mm-hmm.
He was married
Yeah.
to the Phantom of the Opera lead female. I forget her name. She was big for a while after that. But they got a divorce, and I just remember him saying, "Oh, your voice has gotten so much better. You couldn't hit those notes before," or something like that. And I thought, man, there's a divorced couple.
Yeah.
But his stuff is hard to sing.
Yeah, it was Cinderella was his one in 2021
Yeah.
that ended.
And he put out a video during COVID. I really liked it. The song I really liked. He had the woman who was supposed to play the lead sang it, just like on a bare stage. And he said, "I promise you this show will open. I promise you." And apparently it opened, but
Yes. And then I guess it says a Broadway transfer is scheduled to open March 2023. So,
Cinderella.
yeah, Cinderella, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know if it's fair to put these C and D list celebrities having to sing Andrew Lloyd Webber songs. That seems
Yeah,
a little bit
be
mean.
tough.
Yeah, they're not easy.
Yeah.
They're not.
Especially people who were on a reality show 7 years ago or whatever with the types of people that they bring on to now like these are like people who passed or weren't asked in the first 4 seasons of Masked Singer. So imagine what that list
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Well, Rudy Giuliani was on it.
Yeah, Sarah Palin was on
Oh,
it.
you're
That's what I-
kidding. Oh my
I
God.
saw a deal about a couple of the judges literally walked off the set.
Yeah, King John
I would
walked
have.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, it was a kind of a controversy. Anyways, we have a thing. We have tasks for us to do here, guys, and we're supposed to talk about the movies that we're watching. I don't even know if I said that up top, but our movies that we watched this week are The Post and Cinema Verite, and they were both. I think the phrase we said was historical dramas or, based on true events from the early 70s. That's why we chose them together. And we're going to walk through these movies and what we liked about it, what we maybe didn't like, and what were highlights. And what do we do here, Diane? Is that what we do? Give
I
our
think so.
give our opinions.
We give our opinion and recommend whether you should watch it or not.
Okay.
If you haven't seen it,
Mm-hmm.
it's good to hear from like regular people.
Mm-hmm.
What they thought of the movie. Not people don't get paid to tell you what to do.
Exactly. That's right. And so that's what we're going to do here. And I guess we'll start. Well, you ready to start? Is there any more you want to say about any of that? You're good? Okay. We'll start off.
Just an apology for our rambling opening. I mean, you normally talk, but it's usually more on a topic than today.
Yes.
So sorry, everybody.
I think, on things we watched. I finally finished Obi-Wan.
Oh, you did?
Yes. That was very good.
Yes, I really liked Obi-Wan.
It really was very good.
I was trying to think. I watched something. I don't remember what it was now. Maybe I'll remember at some point. Maybe at the end. But yeah, no. I watched these movies. I do know that. I did.
Yeah. We got through these two.
Yeah. I'm watching.
I watched The Greatest Beer Run Ever. That was excellent. I think I'll try to throw it in later on conversation.
Yeah. That would be good to know because I saw that.
Because that was based on real life events too. So I'll throw it in somewhere. Yeah, the true story.
It's on HBO Max, right?
It's on theater.
Oh, I'm trying to remember now. Disney Plus, I want to say. I could be wrong.
It might be.
It's not on HBO.
Apple? I saw it. I know I've seen it.
Apple TV. Yeah, you're right. It is Apple TV. But it's definitely based on true events. I watched a little after thing of Zac Efron talking to the person he played.
I would, that one I have on my list. I want to see that next. The other one that's coming out that I want to see is the Lincoln Project, which is on Showtime, I think. It's a multi-part series. But anyway. Okay, so you ready to start?
Well, ready to start. And you ready to explain the plot of the post to the people?
Not really.
Okay, that sounds good. But you're doing a public service. Here we go. Our feature presentation.
Great. Thank you, Cade. Feature 1, The Post, with Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks. Written and directed by Steven Spielberg. Oh, the writers were Liz Hannah and Josh Singer. This is an amazingly thrilling movie. It was about the Pentagon Papers and publishing the Pentagon Papers. Basically, what the Pentagon Papers was a summary that had been done about wow, that's some interesting noise. Not sure what that was. What didn't come from my microphone. Anyway, with the Pentagon Papers was a summary of some work that military or government officials did based upon the history and an analysis of the Vietnam War in 1970, I believe, or it was published in 71. So it was done before then. And basically what the Pentagon Papers did was they went over the fact that from the time of Truman, the United States has been involved in various aspects of the communism in the Vietnam War and the fight against communism, as everybody knows, through the 50s with Eisenhower as well as Kennedy and LBJ. And bottom line was that the military and the presidents, everyone in government knew that there was no way they could win the Vietnam War. That's bottom line what the Pentagon Papers said. There was an 80% chance that they were going to lose. But they didn't want to end the war because they didn't want to admit a defeat. Where does that sound familiar? But anyway, the story itself begins with Daniel Ellsberg. He realizes the depths of the U.S. government's deceptions about the futility of the Vietnam War. He takes action by copying top secret documents that would become the Pentagon Papers. Later, the Washington Post owner, Cade Graham at the time, who was still adjusting to taking over ownership of the Post after her husband's suicide, the editor for the Post, who works for Cade, discovers that the New York Times has gotten access to the Pentagon Papers and had started to publish an expose on them, and determined to compete. This Bill Bradley, played by Hanks, he gets access to a complete set of the papers as well. So he starts the process of trying to develop stories from them too. The interesting part of this, and the real drama comes in, and this has truly happened, was the U.S. government at the time Nixon was president. They took the Department of Justice took the New York Times to court with a cease and desist order to not publish any more information was in these Pentagon Papers due to national security, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Washington Post went ahead and published anyway, and that was Meryl Streep's character, Kay Graham. Yeah, that was her name. She was the one who made the decision and to go ahead and publish what they had of the Pentagon Papers. So they ended up with the New York Times at the Supreme Court to decide, does the press have freedom of speech or not? And I have to give this one quote before we start talking about this, because I just found this. So this is the majority opinion from the Supreme Court. The ruling was 6-3. The First Amendment, the Founding Fathers gave the free press the protection it must have to fulfill its essential role in our democracy. The press was to serve the governed, not the governors. And that was from the Founding Fathers. Anyway, that was the opinion, so they went ahead and published it. And it was literally the beginning of the end of the Vietnam War and of Nixon's presidency. The interesting concepts to me in this particular film was with Miss Graham herself. You know, she was the first female publisher of any major newspaper, and she was a woman of her times, I guess. Is that, you know, she's probably middle-aged at this point, I think, and she's going to be running the largest newspaper in the country. And before then, and I think the movie does a good job of depicting this, is before the publication of these papers, she was part of the society in Washington. So her, you know, people who were friends of hers were people who were the writers of these papers. You know, she, you know, had dinner with the president, you know, and you know, was part of the elite Washington, D.C. group. And at the time, they kind of took care of each other. And I think there were some telling moments in this with Tom Hanks, you know, role. He was good friends with, you know, John F. Kennedy, and realized that while he thought he was friends with him, he never would be, because he's with the press. Anyway, I think Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks both did an amazing job with their parts. And the movie itself was nominated for an Oscar. There were several Oscars, I think, involved in this particular movie. And I can see why now. I wish I'd seen it when it first came out.
Yeah.
On the big screen. Because the one thing that I really didn't, that kind of bothered me throughout the whole movie, and Ava, I don't know how old you were in 1971. I was a sophomore in high school. And I don't remember colors being that faded back then. They really weren't. Colors were color. You know, you had red was red. It wasn't like it, like, you know. But I noticed this movie, the colors were all really muted, like almost like it was. It's not black and white. What's the other? Like
sepia. Yeah, it's
yes.
Sepia or whatever.
Yeah.
It I think was maybe trying to be like I think people have a vision of what the 70s is, and it's a kind of because of the photography of the time and the way that sort of the color palette was of photography, that's how we look back at that time, and that's through kind of this more like brown tinted, it kind of has a little bit of a more brown kind of like what I have, a little yellow, kind of a yellowish brown kind of tint. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah,
but
warm colors.
That to me, the biggest difference between these two movies was the color.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a bit. To me, the biggest difference between the two movies that we watched is budget and.
Oh well, yeah. Well, of course,
and craft
all the things, but
a little
just
bit.
visually to look at the two, you have one that's in '73 and they have color in their lives, and then you have 1971 and they did not have color. Wow, there was no color. Everything was.
And to me, part of that is also like this movie was trying to be a prestige picture, so it was kind of being a little bit more, and it's Spielberg's sort of prestige color palette, which is a little bit more somber, and that's how he does his serious films in the modern age.
Oh my God.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, regardless, I thought they did a good job with a complicated story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they did a good job of showing.
They simplified it quite. I mean,
was.
it made it digestible. I don't know if simplified is the right word.
You know, it's funny you say that because I found the beginning almost a little patronizing. I don't know how to explain it. It's like and what surprised me, if I can go into my thoughts of the movie.
Go ahead.
What I found surprising is the parts I thought I would really like the most, I liked the least, and vice versa. I thought Meryl Streep was excellent, but I didn't like that part of the story. I really didn't care about her family's legacy and her rich person, and saving the paper and all that kind of stuff. I rather had more focus on the drama of Ellsberg and, as the whistleblower and those scenes were my favorites, especially what was his name? Ben Bagdikian. I remembered his name because his scenes, he was the one on the phone finding, ferreting out. Those were much more interesting scenes. And at the beginning, with the setting up the story with Ben Bradley and Kay Campbell, to me, the dialogue was almost too simple and staged compared to like All the President's Men. Diane and I reference that all the time. That's like, to me, the pinnacle of this type of filmmaking, right? That's based on historical. That felt so natural and like it was being filmed real time.
Yes.
And this one, at least at the beginning, felt like very staged and like they were making this effort to make it, to simplify the story for the audience. But overall, I really liked it. But I just found it interesting because I'm like, what, am I 5? There was from some of the first scenes, I wish I could give you a more specific example, but it just felt like it was almost talking, what
I
is
think
it?
they were
These papers
trying
are written for a 6th grade level reader or something like that. That's what it kind of felt like.
I think that was the way I interpreted that. That's how they talked to her. All the men around her, that's how they talked to her.
Yeah, that could be.
Well, she's a little woman. She can't really understand this.
Yeah.
And in 1971, the way they treated her was pretty standard.
Mm-hmm.
For how women were
talking
treated.
over her. Yeah, not listening to her in the meeting, and she's the one who said just giving a number, and they totally ignored her. And maybe that was it.
She had to have her lawyer speak for her because they were going to listen to her. And the way they talked to her was really patronizing. All the way through the movie until the end.
Yeah.
Where she stood up to him.
Maybe that's what I was picking up on. I didn't. Yeah.
And there's also, I do think that Spielberg was trying to be like, we have to tell the definitive parts of for people who don't even I think they had to do a Vietnam War flashback opening, and they had to I think he was trying to be like, okay, for people who know absolutely nothing about what this is or even what the Vietnam War, so he has to kind of spell out a lot of things in this movie.
That I liked. The wars starting that way I liked, and then the airplane and setting it up that way. It was the first scenes between the two of them, and maybe Diane's right, maybe it was the way he was talking to her. Maybe that was deliberate.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I think it's very, this movie almost seems to want to be like a prequel to All the President's Men. It seems to, really,
is,
and it almost seems intentional at times, and And that was also very fascinating. It's trying to, I feel like, be that. I must say that if it, I love All the President's Men. It's one great man, and just really still holds up. Like, I mean, it's one that's like it. I had to write a paper in college about one of these the years for all the. We had to pick a year for Best Picture nominees, and I picked that because I loved All the President's Men, and I wanted to watch it. I mean, Network was that same year. Rocky was that same year. It's a really great year for. There was a Woody Guthrie biopic that was the same year. Something, it was called something. I forget what that one was called, but All the President's Men's the only one of those that's like you could release that. The way it's edited was still so fast paced. Still, like, I mean, like that's it didn't seem so much of its time. It was almost ahead of its time. The one difference I think between that was one of the most shocking things about All the President's Men is that you can see it how they make different movies now, and they made movies then too, like that. But no, All the President's Men, no arcs for those characters. No, it's just straightforward. Here's the facts. They don't have to go
Here's
going.
Here's how it happened.
Yes, here's how it happened.
Feels like it.
Yes, and it's not like we're not going to dig into how Bob Woodward changed as a person through this and all that. You know, it's just like here's how it happened and made it interesting, and here's a story where these characters are that have a perspective and they don't. This movie's a little different where they want everyone has to have an arc with a weird exception. Like Tom Hanks's character seemed to. I never really felt like I got a feel from his stance, but like I don't know, that was one that I kind of felt like was a bizarre. If you're going to give,
I really thought they were trying to depict him as not a nice guy. Like All the President's Men, you had respect for him. In this movie, that character was like a schmuck. Like he was doing what he was doing out of ego and not really out of, freedom of the press and as a flag bearer for freedom of the press.
Well, I think they tried to do that.
It's the Jack Kennedy thing.
He's the only one. Yeah, he was the only one who was talking about freedom of the press. You can't stop us from posting this because this is, you got to stand up for what's right out of this. And this is where I think he convinces her, because after she met with her friend that wrote the papers and said, how could you let our children go to war?
Yeah.
How could you do that?
Yeah.
And his aunt, he was so wishy-washy anyway, but then it was Tom Hanks coming back going, wait a minute, First Amendment, but it's the freedom of the press. You cannot shut down the press. And I think he was supposed to be the hard-charging, no-nonsense newspaper guy. And they compete. I mean, I know that from just the bank I worked for is every time we had one of our all-hands meetings, it was like, we're going to squish, Citibank. I mean, it was like, that kind of corporate, competitiveness. And he was the driver of that, and so that's the impression I got from him. Not a lot of art because he was hired to be that guy.
Yes, I think the arc situation, like it's fast because I feel like he began as the freedom of the press guy and ended as that. I mean, like to me, that I think he had some moments of contemplation as to whether it was with the Jack Kennedy of it all, of how he was. That was the part where he really
can't be friends with. And with the subjects of your exposés.
But that's where he was explaining to her, because to her, they were her friends, and she was going to, if she made this decision, it would hurt her friends, and that's where he was explaining to her, this is when I found out that I can't be friends with these people.
And let's not forget Diane. Yeah, and then let's not forget, Diane, going back to your point about how she was treated as a woman. Remember, her father gave the newspaper to her husband.
To her husband. Well,
not to her.
Duh.
Not to her. Yeah.
Which, 1971, she couldn't even have a credit card. What do you mean? Yeah. This is
so maybe. So maybe Cade. So you're saying, Cade, that maybe Tom Hanks's Ben Bradley's arc was realizing that. That coming to, or had he realized it already and was explaining it to her, but
I think he took
he didn't change much.
He didn't change. He
much.
didn't change, and that was something that I think the point of that was to sort of him to think back at his own sort of, am I holding up my own standard as to what I've was created for everyone. I think it was more of this weird introspection that like, and I did like it. Like that was one of my favorite parts of the movie, is that sort of, you know, that what he's going through with that. But I don't know, it doesn't seem to change as much as like, as he's like, yep, I've I don't know, I've had a slight perspective shift, but I didn't change as a person. I'm still on the same road as I was before.
Well,
he was the one advancing the plot that wasn't changing. Character wasn't changing that.
But his like,
Did you know
his performance is great though, I thought, and then he embodied him. Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't agree. I don't agree.
The entire press in the 40s and 50s, they kept quiet about Roosevelt being in a wheelchair.
Yes, this is important.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
They kept quiet about Mamie's drinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mrs. Eisenhower had herself a problem.
Mm-hmm.
They kept quiet about Jack and his affairs.
They did, yeah.
All these things were known at the time, but the press kept all that really quiet. This is the day it changed.
Yeah.
This was the day that it changed, that made way for what All the President's Men became.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they ended the movie with the Watergate break-in.
And I think that would have been stronger if the whole Nixon's daughter storyline isn't what started it out in the wedding. Like that seemed to be almost the shift that was thrown into, like they had to do that. And so that was, I mean, I can see if they didn't like immediately have him make this decision on his, like, you know, where he was like, okay, well, we just, you know, are gonna, you know, I don't know. He seemed to be against Nixon from the very get-go and was like, you know, and everything. So I don't know. Yeah,
Nixon wasn't very well liked at that point.
No, yeah.
He was, you know, one of the things I think that just interesting trivia for the movie, all those conversations you hear Nixon having on the phone, those were from his tapes.
That's what I assumed.
Those were not dubbed. Those were real. Yeah. He actually said those things. They
got some guy got to be the back of Nixon's head, just angrily talking on the phone and shaking his finger. And
how ironic, just from a historical standpoint, how ironic that he tapes himself. I think he was the first president who ever taped himself. That kind of, I remember that. I could be wrong about that.
I think that's like,
and then that's what totally tripped him up. That's what got him, was the either the fear or the ego of taping him. You know, taping himself is what did him in the end.
I find Nixon to be so fascinating. I think that he's one of the most fascinating people in American history. He's just and then the fact that he got tripped up over all this, you know, Pentagon paper stuff when it didn't even really involve him. Like, and like even this, he's like the villain of this sort of story, and he fought it, and he fought this, and it's like, let your predecessors, you know, take the fall for this, and you get to come off looking like the good person, and then you could end the war, and then which he eventually, of course, did, but you know, after a lot of pushback.
Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford ended the war. It was Gerald Ford that ended the war.
Well,
it wasn't Nixon.
He
ran his second term. He ran on ending it, but he had no intention of doing it.
Yeah.
Because nobody wanted to be. No one wanted to lose the war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They don't want to.
But he. I don't know. Just the fact that that he wouldn't let them. That was. I mean, most Pentagon was Kennedy and Johnson, and he could have easily let them get all the heat for that, and that yet he kind of made it all him. Because he also was incredibly paranoid and thought anything was an attack against him and all that. That was very much his thing.
That's how he won the election against Herbert Hoover. I guess Humphrey was over the Vietnam War. He's the one who kept it going. We would have been out of it if he hadn't kept it going just to get elected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's why he was so adamant about not letting those papers get released, because that was part of it. Was what he had done as part of the campaign. You should read about that sometime. It's really fascinating because it's you might have yeah. I can't say anything more than that, but you should read about his his first his campaign against Humphrey, and how he got LBJ out of the running. So yes, it's an interesting story, but that's why he couldn't he had to stick with the story, because he was one of the ones that manipulated it. Anyway, neither here nor there. That's all. Just politics and all that other stuff. I love movies.
I'm gonna go ahead, Diane. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'm gonna throw in the greatest beer run ever, because I totally agree. These stories, we've talked about All the President's Men and these nitty gritty stories that are, there's, I don't know what to say. They're not depressing, but they're, nitty gritty. They're hardcore. They're people doing things wrong and people trying to blow the whistle on them and that sort of stuff. So what I loved about the greatest beer run ever is it's such a sweet story. In the same time period, guy feels bad that his friends went off to war, and he sent one of them off to war too. The guy didn't want to go, and he talked him into it, and he was behind the war, basically, good American behind the war. We're fighting for a reason, blah, blah, blah. So he takes a bunch of beer, gets on a cargo ship. This is a story, or, some ship, takes him 2 months to get to Vietnam. And he goes and finds 4 of his friends that are stationed all over Vietnam to give them beer, to hand them beer. And of course, along the way, it's an incredible adventure, right? And along the way, he suffers all the trauma of war, and they depict the real stuff that happened in Vietnam, and then the reactions of his friends when he shows up is like, what the, so I just highly recommend it. I think this movie, The Post, was a very good movie for what it is, but, it's focused on the rich and the elite and the politicians and so on and so forth. The best beer run, the greatest beer run ever is focused on the kids who were fighting the war. His sister, the guy's sister, was on the protest lines, and so they loved each other, but they were at odds. And I won't spoil it, but anyway, the experience of him going over there and coming back. So highly recommended. It's like the other half of the story.
Good, yeah.
The on the ground, the foot on the ground story.
Yeah. So that's the tie-in.
That's the tie-in. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember. So, yeah, did either one of you watch this movie, The Post, when it came out, or was this first time watching it?
I did. I did. I wasn't supposed to tell you. Diane told me not to tell you that.
Oh. Well, we got to kick Ava off now.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. But I will say I didn't remember it. I didn't remember it that well. It was a long time ago. I don't think I saw it in a movie theater. I might have. I'm not sure. But I don't think I liked it as much as you guys did. I did like it. I had a problem actually with Tom Hanks' performance. I think when he wants to play these nitty gritty, rough characters to show his range. I remember Penny Marshall talking about his coach and, the League of Our Own. He wanted to play a disgusting character. And I bought him in that because it's a comedic role. But in this, I just didn't buy him. I don't know why. It's like the voice, like he was putting on the voice. So I didn't care for his performance.
I like what he was doing with his hands. I don't know if that's a very specific thing, but he did these sort of things, and he would like knock on. I don't know. It was just a very specific thing that I liked what he did with his hands in this movie. When this came out, the sort of narrative behind it that I think everyone was having is like, boy, is this just the most Oscar bait movie of all time. That's what was sort of
Yeah.
talked about of this, is that's like, and to the point that like even the Oscars was like, well, no, we're not going to give this to you. I mean, it seems like everyone's just kind of phoning it in and is like, okay, let's just bring in Spielberg and Meryl and Hanks, and we're just going to do this prestige movie. You know, the time, place in which this was made was also brought into question of like, you know, the freedom of the press against this, you know, this president that's become a tyrant. It just seemed very much like, okay, that they were just wanting like, give me Oscar. We did it. We did what we needed to do. And so here's this. And so that was the narrative around it. And now seeing it, I didn't see it at the time because of that. It's because that was when it all ramped up and everyone was, they were trying to be like, hey, come out and see this movie. It's important. And there's a lot of important people in this. And now seeing it well after that, it's a fine movie. I mean, to me, it's kind of unfair to compare later on. We're going to have to put this movie in when Diane and I do our rankings and stuff. And to me, it's a little bit unfair of like, even Spielberg on autopilot is just unfair to compare most like directors to, because Spielberg is on autopilot for this movie. And I think Meryl's on autopilot. I think Hanks is on autopilot, and they're just on this other league that's just like, they're just going through the motions, and yet it's just so simple for all of them. Just it's pretty astounding, and they're all just kind of like, okay, let's just make this movie and we'll see if we can get an Oscar for this. And
you know,
it's astounding.
I saw that we're, you know, a couple of reviewers, and and you had just said that Meryl Streep was just phoning it in and, you know, on autopilot and stuff. But, you know, and I know this is tough, but
I don't know about phoning it in, but she has to,
hard
take
to
off the
play.
craft and land it.
I liked her performance much better than his. I thought her performance was excellent.
It's really hard
Meryl.
to play. It's really hard to play a repressed housewife from the 1950s when you live in 2022. It's not that easy. I know I can't do it, and I'm pretty sure not that many other actresses
Meryl can do
it either.
anything, and I think she can do anything in her sleep and be better than 90%, 95% of actors out there.
I don't think she phoned it in, though. I think that she that took effort to do that, because
I never said she phoned it in, but
well,
I thought you did too, Cade. I
said she did it I said that she put what is an autopilot, and I think that that's I don't think that.
Okay, so autopilot. I want you to go out and autopilot a 1950s repressed housewife.
I couldn't do
her
it.
husband dies, and she is now over the largest newspaper in the world.
Yeah,
they'd make that happen.
I'm saying that there's really undeniable talent that Meryl Streep has that other people do not have, and that she can go in there and do something with less effort than what she typically puts. And I will say, this movie, she put less effort than she typically puts into films.
I don't know about that.
And she was fine. I mean, she was great. I honestly think she's great because she's Meryl. Because Meryl's just great in things, and this is another example of her being great in something, but it's just, it's.
Well, I think we need to interview her. Does somebody know her? Can we call her up? I'd love to know if she felt that way. But, to Diane's point,
I would have thought that.
Well, I don't think she thinks that way. No, I don't think that she knows that. I don't think that Spielberg thinks that he autopiloted this. I don't think that Hanks thinks he's autopiloted this, but they all did. In my opinion, they all did.
They were supposed to sing, Ava. If they had sang, it would be a different story. Mm-hmm. If this was in a musical, that would have been Oscar worthy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, she's not doing a voice. That's one thing she's not doing. She's not doing an accent like she typically does. She's just doing her basic voice that she does. Hanks is doing his basic, but Hanks always when he does a voice, it's often bad unless it's Forrest Gump. But
he was doing a forced voice.
You have to do a voice in order to not be just, there. You have to do a voice.
I want to say I think Meryl Streep did such a good job. I did not like her character. That was because I don't like when weak women, like she to me wasn't assertive enough, right? Because she was a
That's the point of
repressed
that character.
housewife.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Right. So she did that part so well that I didn't like her. That's how good she was. Because I'm always going to love Meryl Streep, right? No matter what she does. But I did not like her because I didn't like the character because she was playing it so well. Does that make
she
any
had
sense?
to turn on for one scene. That's the only scene that she had to do, and that was that push-in camera. Whenever they did that to, when she had to say yes, let's go for
You're
it.
just baiting
That
us.
is
You're
the
just baiting us,
one
Cade.
time that she was like, "Okay, I'm gonna show up for this one," and that was, I will give you guys that. She showed up for that. All the rest of it is good script writing, a great actor, and her being Meryl, and she can do anything. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that she's great, and because she's one of our greatest actors of all time, and we're lucky to live in the time in which we get to see these roles from somebody. But she's on autopilot just like everybody else.
So if one of your redheads that you love so much had done this,
That's
showed
very.
up,
I feel like you're
you would have
minimizing
said,
the work
"Give her
of
an
great.
Oscar!"
Because she had to work at it. She's not as
She
talented
had
as
to work
Meryl
at
Streep,
it.
right?
Yeah. I think there's a reason that
Meryl
Meryl's.
Streep's talented.
I think there's a reason that Meryl's like the most, nominated actor of all time, and that's because she's immensely talented. She's immensely talented.
So, Cade, wait, I got to ask you about this. It's sort of movie history. You know of Roger Siskel and Ebert, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you're too young to have watched them. I don't know. I know they were.
They were around. Yeah.
Yeah, they're before your time. Anyway, Siskel interviewed Meryl Streep. And she told him that she always has a secret about her character. For every character she plays, she makes up a character trait.
Oh, okay.
And she keeps it a secret, and then that informs her performance. So
That's
I just
nice.
wondered if you'd ever heard that. But
No.
and I forget that he did get one of the secrets from one of her movies. I can't remember what it is. I'm going to have to look it up. But that's what I was saying. I'd love to talk to her. She's very self-aware. That's why I said I would love to talk to her and say, which role was the hardest? Is accent harder, or is playing a repressed housewife harder? Right? It's like we don't know. So it'd be really interesting to find out. But I'll have to look that up.
And I'll tell you the
I don't
one
think she gave the
flourish.
secret to all her parts, but
Yes. So I think that like one of the flourishes of Spielberg's direction in this was from her storyline. They seem to give more care for her storyline than everything.
Yeah.
And that this, I mean, it could have been written in the script, but it certainly, it felt like this was additions, or like this was Spielberg's way of visually telling that story. And that was having the scenes with her and various women that were like, I don't know, maybe that was in the script that says she passes by groups of women and has these sort of things, but that seemed to be a direction choice to sort of show the importance of this character. Because a lot of that was unsaid in a movie where everything else was so verbally said and hit you over the head with this is about, the freedom of press and all that stuff. Her being a trailblazing woman was not said all that much, but it was visually shown quite a bit, which makes me think that it wasn't in the script.
It very possibly.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty hard
though
to walk through any major metropolitan area where there were protests going on and not seeing a lot of women back in 1971. Don't know why exactly. Could be because we couldn't even have a credit card. But that,
it wasn't. It was in that. It was like whenever she was showing up to speak it was there was purposefully, it was a purposeful, casting of extras in different parts. And like when she was showing up at the Supreme Court, that was the thing. And then there was then of course whenever they left, and then there was even some other visual ones earlier on that was sort of the point. Yeah.
Yeah, when the after dinner and it was time for the women to leave
Yes,
the
well,
room so that
yes.
the men could smoke. Yeah, you know, yeah.
And that was in the
Anyway,
fact that she was, the head of a major paper, and they had to leave because they were going to talk, business and politics. And it's like, yeah, well, she's the head of one of the most major newspapers, or of the time,
yeah,
that area at
not
least.
going to give her credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband did that. Her daddy did that, not her.
Mm-hmm.
That's they kept making that point over and over again. Anyway, did you notice, Ava, that Carrie Coon was in this?
Who?
Our friend from the Gilded Age, Miss Coon, Carrie from the Gilded Age. She played Meg Greenfield, a reporter for the Washington Post. Oh, I loved her character in this too.
Was she the one who said
yes. Now that you say it, yes.
Yeah.
She's the one who crashed the wedding, or she said she didn't crash it, but she crashed. Yes.
She really did.
Yeah. Now that you say it, yeah. No, I didn't recognize her till you just said it.
Yeah, she was the lifestyle reporter that wanted to do more than be the lifestyle reporter.
Lifestyle reporter, yeah.
Yeah, but and Bill Bradley was giving her a chance to do that. Anyway,
I had 3 notes I want to quickly run through before we do anything. I wanted to say, very opening thing of the movie, no sound for the 20th Century Fox opener, which I think Steven Spielberg could get away with, telling 20th Century Fox that. No, we're going to, have a, just soundless. I mean, it was like it was Foley work. But anyways, and then I had no idea that like this was a reunition, what's the word?
Reenactment?
No, like a reunion. Reunion is the word I'm looking for. A reunion from Bob Odenkirk and David Cross. They're from Mr. Show, and they were both reporters in this Washington Post. I mean, like the very famous. Bob Odenkirk was their point of view character for this movie. It was so bizarre. It was bizarre that like I didn't realize that he was going to be kind of your person that you followed through all this. And I love Bob Odenkirk, and but yeah, I mean, like this would be like if 10, 20 years from now, there's an Oscar movie and 2 of the reporters are like Key and Peele. Like it's that sort of odd and bizarre. Like they're like these old, these sketch comedy duo that are now playing it completely straight in a show together, or in an Oscar movie together. The other one that it was a bizarre note for me. I don't know if I wasn't paying attention. I don't know, because I was for like the first like 20 minutes kind of doing. I had a busy weekend, so I wasn't paying as close of attention. Did Sarah Paulson just show up an hour into this movie? Yes. And I just missed. Okay.
She did.
And that was the first time. I'm like, did I miss something that I didn't?
Wait, Cade, are you saying you were on autopilot watching this movie?
Well, I felt like I was paying close attention, but then when Sarah Paulson showed up with literally no fanfare, act like we were supposed to like, already know who she was, I was like, did I completely miss something that I didn't see? But yeah. Because I then even made a note of it. It was 59 minutes into the movie that Sarah Paulson shows up. And we're supposed to just, know who that is. And the fact is, when the credits rolled, she was third billed. It was Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks, Sarah Paulson.
Oh, really? So there was some editing going on with her character.
Yeah, perhaps they cut out some of Ben Bradley's home life in the first half of the movie.
They cut out his arc.
No. It's possible.
Get it under 2 hours.
That's why I didn't have one. Yeah.
It's possible, because that would make sense as to why that character was just completely introduced with no fanfare, as if like that did not seem like the type of scene in which she would be the.
It was a bit disconnected. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I bet you're right. I bet they did cut some scene opening scene with her or something with that. Okay. Well, any other notes that you guys have that you want to?
I just want to mention the one scene. Again, I really liked. Do you know who the actor is? I'm sorry, I don't. Who played the Begdickian, the guy on the phone who found Ellsberg?
Is he the main, like the reporter that was? doing all. Is that what you're talking about? The reporter
Yeah,
who?
he who got the Pentagon Papers. He
Yeah,
brought him on the airplane with him.
Yes, that's Bob Odenkirk. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering if that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I really liked him in the scene with the phone where he, like, if there was an advertisement for a cell phone, that was it. Like, first it's got to be on one phone, no burner phone, right? So one, I can't even remember the name of them. Public payphone, a payphone. That's what I was trying to think of. He's on one payphone. They tell me he has to call from another, and then he pulls change out, and the change falls all over the ground. I got a big kick out of that scene. And the urgency, it's like, cell phone. Somebody invent a cell phone.
And that's just the physical comedy of, like, I mean, Bob Odenkirk is so talented. So, I mean, like, so unbelievably talented that he can do like that. I mean, you can believe.
He's so talented that, he just showed up.
They don't show
didn't really have to
I
work
think
on
that
that.
all of these people are happy to be in a Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg movie.
He's so talented that he could just phone it in.
I don't think any of the surrounding people phoned it in because they felt like they were on they thought this was their chance, and so they're all giving it 120%, but everyone else is sitting there being like, yeah, well, we're going to win the Academy Award. I think everyone was so certain that they were going to win the Academy Award. Those three people, Stephen, Tom, and Meryl, that they were just like, whatever, let's do this.
Harry.
we're gonna win. It's already, we have this script. It's perfect timing. It's us. We've all got our schedules together. Let's just go into the makeup chair and get our costumes, and then we're just gonna go in there and we're just gonna do it, and it's gonna be simple. We're gonna win the Academy Award for this one, hands down. I think they thought that. I think they could, that is my. But whatever. But
see, I would say that about Tom Hanks, but not Meryl Streep. Tom Hanks was like, I'm going to put on this really gruff voice and do something with my hands, and I'll win an Oscar. Not Meryl.
Okay.
Well, Diane's not saying anything. She's just rolling her eyes, Cade.
Okay. Well, let's go through here. Would you recommend this movie? Diane, go first.
Yes, I would recommend this movie. I had an intern from RSU tell me one time that she would really wanted to see the non-liberal story from the Vietnam War. That she would really have she'd like to know about the conservative perspective on the Vietnam War. That the liberals had actually told the story on that, and there had to be a different take on it. She would rather have seen the conservative take on the Vietnam War. And I looked at her and went, you can't apply today's politics to then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you really can't. Yeah. It's like this was the story.
But here you go. Here's four lying presidents. That's what you got. Four lying presidents.
I was thinking. I was watching
the other side of the story.
You should watch this movie.
Yeah.
She could get the whole history. She could figure out which one of those presidents were conservative and which were liberal. Because I'm not sure I could, but she could do it. Sure. Anyway, so I would recommend it. And which can I use?
Oh, sorry, forgot. Yes, we're supposed to be doing. What emoji you want?
I sent you a text.
Oh.
Can I use any of those emojis, or do I need to stick with the drinks? Because if I need to stick with the drinks, that's fine.
The drinks are kind of your thing. I would hate you to change brands.
But I'm so limited on the drinks.
It's a drink.
I would give this one 4 martinis, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Didn't something with a
that was in the Loud family. I've got to use it.
Oh, that's right. That's what it was. I was like, did I see something where that was a thing? How many did you want to give, Diane?
4. 4 martinis.
Diane really liked this movie a lot.
I did like this movie a lot. I like movies that tell a story that people should know.
Mm-hmm.
They should know this was a pivotal moment within our history of the country.
Yeah.
Big time.
Sure.
And the thing that the ball that rolled downhill from this, from the Nixon administration, we got Roger Ailes, we got Roger Stone, we got Fox News, we got all these things occurred as a result of this story, all the presidents of the times, right?
I think,
This is when the
yeah, it's also
reporting
where
changed.
people there started to have, it's obviously when we came to a head, the distrust of government during this time. And I think that people often, point to different things, but I think government also, like, they pushed the boundary of with Nixon, and how far you can sort of get away with corruption and with all these things, that it eventually broke the system, and then how far the press would allow a president to sort of break, and eventually when they held their feet to the fire, it kind of caused the whole house of cards to tumble, and we still haven't we've went further down that road at times, it feels like that,
Right.
which is, I don't know.
Maybe
It's good
all
that
the way.
it's good that it happened. It needed to happen, but it's kind of it's sad. It makes you, it's like it's there's no going back. There's no putting whatever cat inside the bag anymore of that. There's no going back to a time in which everyone can like say everything's good, and those in power have your best interest and they're perfect people, and it's no going back to that. Great. Ava, would you recommend this movie?
I would recommend it. I liked it. I wanted to like it more. So I give it 3 Liberty Bells, if you can give me a
Okay.
bell. Freedom of the press type thing. I thought it could be better. The focus of it wasn't, my favorite. And I agree with Diane on the story. It's an important story. It's a great story. But again, I would rather have focus shifted a little bit onto other aspects of the story, as opposed to, again, the legacy of the paper and all that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, we are talking about lives of kids.
Yes,
But definitely
the
worth
movie
seeing.
shouldn't have been,
Definitely worth
the
seeing.
movie shouldn't have been named The Post then.
Didn't say that. Didn't say that. It's just a preference. It's just a preference. It's not a. It's not a diss.
Yeah, I would recommend this movie. I did really like it. I thought it was, it's more of the history of the time, but I also really like movies of groups of people working together for some sort of common goal. And working long hours and trying to, in the different, in like politics in this case, very literal politics at play there, and personal responsibility and greater good. Like, I like those things, and I think this movie is a really great example of that, of these groups of reporters, and where I would like the scenes where they were all went to Ben Bradley's house, and they were all working there, and they were trying to piece this all together, and they were like, oh, well, what's this, and there's this amendment, and trying to piece that all together. And then I love the whole seeing how the newspaper, like, I love, like we've said before, things that go into the weeds of how the mechanics of these sort of things work, and seeing that at play, and the amount of research that had to go into, here's how they made newspapers at that point, and how that, like, every step in the chain of that was very fascinating.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Because and you got to see every step of, okay, now this has got to get written and then sent over to the person who's going to proof it and have to fit it into the column, and then and then get it, and then make the typesets and then put that through, all that. I did really enjoy that. There were at times I did want to mention Spielberg, one weird thing that I think this movie even made even more clear, because this is something he should have, cared a little bit more about than some of, like, Ready Player One, or was the other movie he did that was like, but I don't know if, or Last Indiana Jones, I don't think he knows what good CGI is, or doesn't care, or there were several points, or maybe they didn't have a good enough budget. I don't understand how, like, because like those newspapers going up and down at like one of those last shots of where the newspapers were being filtered through there, just awful CGI. And the Supreme Court, that it was obviously around in like a green screen area. Most of all the rest of them were in, but I don't know what that means, because he should have a better eye for that. He knows he maybe because he came around and
done big CGI movies, yeah.
Well, my thing is like,
maybe he phoned it in.
Ran out of time.
he ran out of time. Maybe he phoned it in. Maybe you're right there, Ava. I think
they filmed this in like 4 weeks, so
yeah, you're right.
Ran out of time.
He phoned in the CGI.
Yeah, I don't know. Like part of, because like he comes from a time like of when these like practical effects, and that's what everyone, obviously Jaws is this great effect, and like everyone, Jurassic Park, these great effects, but I mean the CGI even we kind of say okay whatever with those, but like they weren't good, and the practicals what everyone talks about, and I don't think he's ever been good. That's my controversial take about Spielberg. Maybe he doesn't know. I'm gonna give this a newspaper.
I knew you were gonna do that. I wanted to give it a helmet. I wanted to give it
a helmet. I'm gonna give it a helmet, a newspaper, and there's 2 newspapers.
A helmet that went over my head. What's a helmet?
The helmet, the army helmet. Army helmet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I thought it was good. But yes, I do have, I think people might have phoned it in. I don't know if I said that earlier or not, but do we miss that? I had that as a note, but kind of want to put that in there. Great.
You got it in. Snuck it in just under the wire.
Here's the recommendation. Watch this movie for the contents of the movie, the historical portion of the movie. It's a historical docudrama sense to it.
Yeah.
And don't worry about the acting because it's all phoned in.
No, it's great. I mean, like for this type of movie, if they're going to be straight and they're going to just like, here's what happened and this sort of thing. I mean, they hired Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep and Steven Spielberg to make just like a factual movie about here's what happened. And it's going to be better than any other team that goes and makes this style of movie, or this movie in particular. Could they have all made a better movie, and the script writers and everything? Yeah, they could have. They could have if they wanted to, but I don't think they wanted to. They wanted to do what they did. I will stand by that. Okay, well, that has been The Post. We all recommended it. Varying degrees, I think, of recommendation there, but we're going to head into our intermission. We should grab something from the concession stand or whatever we say. And then when we come back, we will talk these. What's our next one, Diane? It's it's Cinema Verite. Cinema Verite, and from 2 years later in the timeline of things, and we will be right back, and Ava will give us the plot of that.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's intermission time. All these delicious treats are waiting for you at the refreshment stand. Delicious fresh popcorn, ice-cold cola, and candy you know and love. They're all ready for you now, so you won't have to miss any of the feature. Come and get them.
And now, on with the show.
Hi, so Cinema Verite. So this film is a fictionalized account of the production of An American Family, which was a PBS production. It was billed as a documentary, and it's considered to be one of the first examples of reality TV. Supposedly spawned many, many others. Actors actually play the roles of the real-life family that was excuse me, that was the subject of the reality series. And so they essentially reenact scenes from the documentary. And there's a few real snippets of footage sort of sprinkled in as well. And then there's the behind the scenes story also mixed in, showing from the perspective of the producer and the filmmakers who made it. So the series appeared back in 1973. This film was in 2011. And it was kind of got mixed reviews from my research. And that is what it is about.
Yeah. We were, I was also getting a snack from a concession stand.
Oh, sorry. Right? I didn't talk long enough for the snacks.
We were both in the middle of a...
Put me back on. I'll keep going.
I put myself on mute so you wouldn't hear me crunching.
Yes. Same. I'm trying to get rid of this newspaper now. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I mean, it was...
Uh-oh.
Oh, did you not like it? I'll tell you, this was on my list for a while of wanting to, and I guess we'll talk about it. This is one of these movies that of why I even created this show. It's just these movies that's like, these are on my list, and I don't ever, one day I'd either watch them or I can force two people to watch them with me so I can talk. So this is... I don't think this is by far a great movie, but at the end of the day, I enjoy it because I enjoy the actors in this. And I'll tell you, this is a different story of they are giving it their all. They're missing the mark in a lot of ways, but they're giving it their all.
Well, I don't think it's the performances were the positive part of it.
Yes,
absolutely.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
But to me, it was so confusing. Like, I would have rather that they use the actors for all the non-show scenes, right? Because why reenact something that was supposed to be reality, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I've seen that done before, and I'm interested in Cade, in your opinion, because you're a documentary filmmaker, but it would have worked for me much better if the actors had just done the off camera, whatever you want to call it, the off show stuff, and then use real footage, which they mixed in anyway.
That was a bizarre
real footage for the real bizarre. And then my biggest problem with the movie was, and I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I'm not sorry I watched it. That's my guide. I'll recommend something if I'm not sorry that I saw it. So I'm not sorry that I saw it. But to me, the off-camera stuff or the behind-the-scenes stuff wasn't based on anything true that I could find. It wasn't based on somebody's book or somebody's memoir. It wasn't based on the filmmakers, because in the movie they show, the conflict between the producer and the folks shooting the movie. And so to me, it was like, why are you creating this reenactment? Except to show, a little bit of the conflict behind the scenes. I get that. I was just hoping I had high hopes for it again, that, it would be like an expose about what went on behind it. I think they did a good job of explaining why reality came being. I thought there was some noble purpose in what the producer said, mixed in with, but at the end of the day, I think it was just showing how reality TV is manipulated from both sides of the camera, right? And I think everybody knows that by now. I don't think that's anything that has to be said.
Perhaps it was a little bit more of an interesting point to make in 2011. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're
true. It is 2011. Yeah, yeah. It did come out in 2011.
To me, I thought, I wished we would. The more interesting thing is the ramifications. Like I've always think of like.
Yes, I agree.
That I think it was John Waters that had some sort of funny joke about people often tell these movies about these things and then they leave them and he's like, well then now what? Okay, well and to me that to me is always more interesting. I feel like movies this is a prime example of a movie that's just more interesting is what happens after this, or they rush through what the most interesting part is by the end.
So I actually, so when they started saying, so when the series ended and they started showing, some of that, what you're talking about, there was 10 minutes left of the movie. And then when they got to the part where they were showing the blurbs, like what happened to people, every single one of those blurbs was more interesting than that movie. If they had taken any one of those blurbs and explored any one of them, to me, it would have been a much more interesting movie.
Yes.
I remember when the series came out, it was a big deal. I was, in 73, I was 14. And I remember it didn't keep my interest. It was like mundane stuff, kind of, I don't know, but I remember it being a big deal and people watching it and, oh my gosh, how could these people go on TV and reveal all this stuff? And I remember that. I remember that very clearly. So yeah, I guess, and maybe that's why I wanted to see more of the aftermath, because I do remember it. I'm old enough to remember when it came out. So it's like, there wasn't much new in it for me. So I would have liked it better. But
I wish they would.
Okay, I'm done.
No, I
had to get that off my chest.
That's one of my biggest
Sure.
criticism that I left with, was the fact that it would make the midpoint, because I assumed that's what they were going to do, was it was going to deal with the ramifications more, because that's really what the themes are about, and that's really what, like, and so to me that would, like, make your midpoint the release of this show or whatever. Or make this, it'd make more sense if the show was a series. This would be a mini series. Like, I think that's a fascinating story that I don't think this was perhaps the best movie for that. Like, in some other people's hands, or some other way of telling that story would have been a lot more interesting. But great, like the actors are, I think that's perfectly cast. I think that, like, I love Diane Lane. I really do, and I love Tim Robbins a lot too. Yep. I agree. James Gandolfini, it's great. The three of them are great actors, and I think that was. I don't know. Maybe they do a sequel to it, because they I guess did a sequel to the show 10 years later.
The reenactment, right? All they had to do was watch all they had to do was watch the real film and, kind of copy that. I think it didn't help either that obviously the mother/wife was very manipulative, but the husband was such a schmuck. But again, like, their history after the show is just fascinating.
That is fascinating.
It's like, it was more fascinating than what was in the show.
Well, to me, like, it was almost suggesting, which I think is a very fascinating thing, and like the fact that how their relationship was the fact that, like, if had this reality show had not been around, they would have just stuck through these problems. Like, they would have, like, would have silently dealt with it or whatever, but it was because this camera was there and that, like, everyone got to see these issues that they had, that everything needed to be heightened, and they needed, consequent, like, and she didn't want to be the person out there with, like, allowing this sort of, thing to happen. She felt like she had a spotlight and she was, had an important thing to say. That, that sort of suggests that is the reason why it happened, was because of the camera. Yeah,
it was pushed by the producer. Plus, that was probably part of her logic going into it was, I can get him. I can expose him. I can expose my troubles. I can expose him. I can, I can really get to him type thing. I don't know. And then I, of course, was just so horrified. I hadn't remembered this part, probably because I didn't watch the whole series when it was out. But her trying to get her son to tell the husband. Maybe this is a spoiler, but I was like, oh my God, she's a wacko.
Yeah.
It's like, what the heck? And it's like, maybe it's, was showing how trapped she kind of felt by all this that was created by the show, right? It's like she wanted to expose him, but then it's like, oh my God, this is big. I'm really doing this cruel thing, to him and probably my family. So, but then to try to get the son to
I think it was.
I was like,
it was
what?
so that wouldn't be in the camera, or his reaction or whatever. Like that was the way it was sort of painted. Was that, which would make sense even from the perspective of why she, even with the lines that she, or what she actually said in real life, was like, did he not tell you and all that? So I guess she did do that. I mean, that was a factual thing that she did tell her son to break that news. Fascinating thing, like just the story is like the stuff that happened on this show is pretty astounding, and how and groundbreaking of what happened on this reality. I mean, the fact that it dealt with, like, it was just, I picked a random family, and then the fact that like all of this happened is pretty astounding.
Well, it kind of engenders it, right? You got to tell a story. Go ahead, Diane. Sorry.
One of the things that when I was kind of reading about this story through interviews with Diane Lang, and where she had interviewed with Pat Loud and all that, and the camera people who went on to produce a follow-up in 1983, because they stayed close to the family. The camera people did.
Makes sense.
And they said that this producer that's played by James was actually worse than he was portrayed in this movie. The Svengaliness of him, and he manipulated the entire family. Yeah, each one of them.
And that would be a more fascinating thing too, if that was sort of the. I mean, like there's a way to sort of, I think, tell that, but you hire him and he kind of plays it. I mean, the script is to play it a little bit like, I mean, he does go far and everything, but at times it felt like you were kind of on his side, like with like, it's like, because like they play it like, oh, look at these people not getting the the important thing, like they had a job that they're not doing, is the way it almost is like played in this movie. Is like, look at these two that have these high expectations of their art form, and it won't just do their job like that. That's the way it was played, I felt like at times.
Yeah, I agree. But I heard that same quote that Diane did about the two. And those filmmakers went on to become Oscar-winning documentarians. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, again, that's one of those blurbs at the end. That's
what did they do? Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, that was. I saw that.
Plus, probably you got to assume that that experience for them informed what they then became, and how they filmed things and how they did things, which again, more interesting than this movie.
Well, and then
to me,
more interesting, the fact that they are a married couple and they're watching the dissolution of a marriage that's supposed to be this ideal version of the American family. Like that is also fascinating that this does not sink into. Like, there's one line that James Gandolfini says that's like, "Oh, what do you think that like this is going to happen to you?" or some sort of something. There was some line whenever that big fight happened, and it's like, that's interesting. That's just, he's just said, but oh well, that's. Yes, there was a lot of interesting things, avenues that this could have went. That, yeah, I agree. But I think it goes a long way. I do think that is a fascinating story. I think that the son who moved to New York and to Paris, that's a fascinating story too. That this movie, and important, like in the grand scheme of things, of what that what he meant to the gay community, that was, he became a icon for that, and that very much brushed over.
He allowed, well, plus then that was another blurb. Should I say it, or is it a spoiler?
Go ahead. I mean, yeah, it's real life, I guess.
Yeah, he allowed cameras to follow him in 2001 while he was dying of AIDS. Mm-hmm. Again, much more important. In fact,
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, and the fact that like he wanted, like one of his last wishes was his parents to get back together, and then like they lived together. Like this is all very fascinating.
Yeah. Show me that. Yeah.
And how do you adapt from like the fact that like everyone in that town knows you, and people outside in the world know you, and like you couldn't go to, like, especially in the like decade after that, like what that does, and even like years later, and like someone like recognize you. Wait, are you? One of the members of the Loud family? That's fascinating, and like the fact that people so intimately felt like they knew you and knew aspects of your life that people shouldn't know, and like that's a isolating experience that no one can really relate to, and that's fascinating. Also fascinating, the kids that had to, they were kids that had like, everyone knows your parents' stories and their faults, and everyone knows their and then having to deal with the fact of that, and having to create your own life there. One of them what did they say, worked for Saturday Night Live? Is that what it was? One of them worked
something like that.
Yeah.
And Gandolfini's character says that somewhere along the line. He says, this will probably change these kids' lives, and maybe for the better. And I think some of those blurbs a lot of them went into, either TV or promotion or, something of that nature. That's why I say that the last 10 minutes, they had focused on that.
Or when they went on Dick Cavett and they were all like kind of pointing, and they're like saying, well, hey, this, they really manipulate, like just them reacting to what happened and the fame and the fact, like it comes up, like you said, in this last 2 minutes, there's a little blurb. They go on a media blitz to save their reputation. That's a movie right there.
Show me that.
Yeah. That would have been
reenacting the series. Yeah.
The best part of this movie was Tim Robbins' hair.
Yeah. Well, because like that would be a fascinating. Like it's set afterwards, and they're having to like you open with them like watching their life that just went out into the world, and it starts every week. It's a new thing, and it's building, and like you get pieces of this, like they're trying to figure out this divorce situation, and you get pieces of this through it's later being aired to the public, and them having to then like
confusing,
and like the fact that they are anticipating knowing that all this is about to be released to the public, and like that would be a fascinating movie, and like you kind of get these pieces as an audience, and then them like going out and being recognized everywhere, and going to the Dick Cavett show and all these different shows to try to be like, oh no, we're an American family. That's a fascinating movie too.
And if some of the behind the scenes stuff had been real, like I said, that's why I looked like, is this based on somebody's memoir? But it's not. So it's like, so what's it worth then? If that's not based on anybody's memoir or whatever, when it first started, what popped in my head was, this is the family version of the bling ring. Everyone wants to be famous. Oh, this is a family that wants to be famous instead of these kids robbing stores.
They were the Kardashians before the Kardashians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if like they all wanted to be famous. I think
maybe not some of the younger kids, but
I think like did Tim Robbins want to be famous?
Oh, well, the movie claims he did. He was like all for it, his ego.
Oh, well, yeah, because he didn't want, what ended up changing his mind was the fact that someone else was going to get in if he didn't. Remember, that was like the whole thing, like someone like, well, they're going to go to this other family, and that's the way the movie, of course, personified it, was that like, well, he's like, well, never mind, if someone else, I want the opportunity if it's going to go to someone else we know.
Did you catch that line at the beginning, or not a line, but they talked about how producer worked with Margaret Mead, on filming a primitive family. So he wanted to do an American family. I thought that was funny. It's like, what's primitive and what's not, right?
And I also find it fascinating. Why didn't the producer work again? Like that was left open-ended.
Go find that producer. Go find him and find out what happened.
Was he like blacklisted, or was it like did he just was like not like, because like that would inform so much of that character as to, did he just couldn't find work out? Like the people, like I get a lot of people viewed it as like lowbrow entertainment. And I can see that perhaps is why he didn't get more work, is that people kind of viewed that as like, or did he not?
Yeah, but why isn't he touted as, I mean, look at reality TV and the industry, and why isn't he touted as a hero?
Yes. Yeah.
Again, another blurb that would have been much.
Well, and then also fascinating is like, why didn't this spawn a movement? It was so immediately popular, and we know if something's popular, knockoffs happen and things. I mean, it's not till decades later that this pops off, and people were watching this and talking about this. Why did it take that long for people to do that? Was it the budget? Part of me thinks it was not cost effective in the 70s to make this sort of thing. Well,
plus it was PBS. You know, yes. PBS was highbrow, right? I don't know if it's still considered that, but PBS was highbrow. It was serious. It was academic. It was, history. It wasn't network TV, sitcom pablum. It was always touted as the opposite. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I see why PBS maybe didn't, but it's surprising that a network didn't. But I bet it has to do with the amount of footage you have to get. Yeah, it was not cost effective in the 70s. Now it's the most cost effective because that doesn't matter. We don't have to pay writers. You don't have to pay writers. You don't have to. Yeah, and well, in that you're not burning up reels of film. It's just going to be a footage on it's going to be footage on a little card somewhere or on a server. That doesn't even matter anymore. And you don't have to light it and all that. It's no writers.
So both of you, I want to throw this out there to both of you. I'm a Deadliest Catch fan. I know Diane's not, but one of the main characters in Deadliest Catch, one of the captains, is always saying, "This is a documentary. It's not a reality show. This is a documentary." And I wonder, can you really make a documentary filmed that way? Now those captains, I don't feel like they play to the camera and want to be famous. They're actually, they feel to me serious about showing you what it's like to be a captain in the danger. And they don't have time to play for the camera half the time, right? They're dealing with dangerous stuff all the time. But what do you think? I mean, you make documentaries, Cade, what do you think? Can you really make a documentary filming live action like that? Can you call it a documentary?
I don't necessarily have. I think each project's different. I don't think the way that a lot of them were looking at this isn't documentary or this isn't. It's it's not what you were making. I mean, it's not what you initially went out to make. I do think that you have to have a mission statement and an idea of what you're making with your project. But I think documentary can be anything as long as, you're not feeding people lines and having them, you don't have a script or something that you're adhering to. I think I don't know
that manipulation, that line, they were talking about this producer.
I think that's the project dependent. I think that this is what was made there was art, and that was destroying of an American family. I think that's art. I think that I do think that in a roundabout way, what he did was fascinating and interesting. It was real life people's lives, which I think that's what a lot of people get hang-ups on. But it's still, it's film, it's art. I do think, is it documentary? I don't necessarily care if it's documentary or not, but it is art as far as I'm concerned. Would I make that? I would have some severe hesitations about destroying. I wouldn't sleep well at night if I did that to some family and ruined. I mean, really, it's the kids' lives that you just think about of how that got what got ruined there. It wouldn't be the projects that I would work on, but they did it. There's no one, I guess, undoing it. And I think the world's world's a better place for it having done. Not to that family, but I think the world in general.
Well, reality TV had to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
It had to start somewhere. So by the time you get to The Apprentice or The Kardashians or then, they figured out a way to script it. That this is what we're going to do today.
No, those aren't
instead
art.
instead of just following people around with a camera, they have, a project. They have a plan. This is what we're going to shoot today. And although we aren't paying writers and yada, 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 we're going to pay the family to be producers. So they can say, okay, today we're going to go shopping for new boobs. Okay. And we're going to go to these places. You want to have this crew, and this is what we're going to go do.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yeah. And then there's going to be someone else that's going to feed them some lines that's going to make it more interesting.
Yeah.
It's like in The Apprentice, all the lines that during the last, portion of the show, all those lines were pre-written and handed to, the people who were
and
part
storyboarded
of the
out and and planned and everything.
Yeah.
And here's what this episode,
Well,
here's what the storyline is. Yeah.
Because they're not going to
And I
waste
actually
money
watched-
following people around.
Yeah.
With cameras.
Well, but you're right. Let's point out the Loud family did not get paid. That was brought out in this movie. That they did not. They asked him if they were going to get paid, and he goes, "No, oh no, this is, no." I forget what the reason was, but they weren't paid. So now fast forward to the Kardashians, who get paid a gazillion dollars, and really, what reality TV now is, most of it is a big commercial, right? I mean, the Kardashians is just commercials for all their businesses is what it is. Just promoting them left and right. So, the tables kind of turned, right? They're making a bazillion dollars off of everybody's involved in the show is making a lot of money type thing. So, it's fascinating the way it's evolved. And, certainly not all good. I certainly miss the old well-written. I love a good well-written script more than reality TV.
I agree. I think
I don't know. I love The Amazing Race.
Yes, I agree. I was just going to say that, I watch a lot of reality TV. I'm surprised at the amount I watch. So, like you're saying, Cade, it depends on the project. Yeah, Diane and I love The Amazing Race. And, they never say if they get paid or not. I doubt if they get paid. If you're racing for a prize, do you get paid? Do you get an appearance fee? I don't know.
I never know.
But, some of those people, they're there for commercial too, right? Some of those folks, we're internet people, come watch our internet. There's a promotion aspect to some of those teams too.
That's very true. I mean, like that now, any of them they get more subscribers and followers and to appear in that to boost their to be influencers. I think the difference is the case of I still do think that the reactions and the feelings were true from the Loud family. I mean, they were amplified and everything. And I think that's the sort of difference that you see now. All of that is just, that's not really how people feel. It's not really how people think. It's what's that episode and whatever they're trying to do there. I think that's fundamentally the difference. And I do think what the producer, again, in this movie, and I think perhaps in real life, he was getting to the heart of what these people were actually feeling, and perhaps buried deeper within a few layers. And I do think that that's somewhat documentary, is to get people to express how they feel more so than perhaps they would in real life. Because in real life, it would just be people sitting around a dinner table, like they said, and just, saying everything's fine, and it's really not. And so he's trying to say what's really underneath the surface there, and let's bring it to a head. And pushing it, where it gives, he pushes it pretty far, but still though. So Diane, would you recommend this movie?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just made myself sit through it. It was like the bling ring. I think that was a good analogy.
This isn't bling ring level of Gucci.
Tim Robbins' hair is pretty cool.
You think Diane? You generally think this is as bad as them walking through closets and naming products for 2 hours straight?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend this movie. No, I wouldn't recommend. No. I'm going to give it a martini.
Okay.
One martini.
Martini. Okay.
Notice I didn't even say that much about it because I don't have to with you two both talking and saying everything there is to say about the movie that's not. Wait a minute. There was something I liked about it. Their costumes were more realistic to the 70s than the Post. But it just could be because the Posts were all elite people.
Mm-hmm. We are going to say that the Post costume designer was phoning it in?
Yeah. Well, everybody phoned it in, right? Is that what you said, Cade? Everyone phoned it in and got an Oscar nom.
Well, they didn't.
But yeah.
Some of them did.
And the color was real.
I liked, or I didn't like the car scenes were awful looking. That they were in front of a green screen.
Was there anything that was good? I mean, come on.
I did like the pool. They were sitting on the patio, and the pool was quite obviously filled with algae. And I'm like, is that just part of this? And then they bring it up, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's why they did that.
Oh, that was another horrifying thing. He left those kids alone in a fire. And didn't even acknowledge it.
Oh, because she's like, I almost died, and what was his reaction? Like, oh, sorry to hear that. Is what I think it was. Yeah, and that's you're right. I mean, they all kind of abandoned their family in various points.
They got stuck in. They bit off more than they could chew. I don't think they realized what they were.
Yeah.
Getting themselves into.
So, Ava, would you recommend this movie?
I would recommend it only if you don't know anything about it. For this, I hate to say historical value, but TV history. If you're a TV buff into TV and history, I would recommend it. Otherwise, if you're familiar with the story and you're familiar with it at all, then no. I don't see a lot of value to it at all. So I would give it. Is there like a bullhorn? I want the irony of the family name being Loud. Right?
Okay.
Loud, and here they are on reality TV being loud about their lives. So a bullhorn or an ear or something.
There. Is that good? It's like a little megaphone.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would recommend this movie. It was, I think it was not perhaps, it was cheaply made. It was a TV movie, in more ways than one.
TV movie. Everything we watch now is on TV.
No, but it was a 2011 TV movie, which puts it a little bit. I mean, yes, I agree. I don't have a problem with the stream. Some of my favorite films are TV movies. But this
after school specials,
yeah. So I really just mean like the quality wasn't up to par of like a feature film of its time at the time. But as far because I think of like the car scenes in particular were like particularly rough. Like if they're not going to be in a set, it shows a little bit more. And I do think that there was a lot more interesting ways to tell that story, but the story is fascinating, and I still just find it bizarre that I don't feel like enough people saw this movie in its time, that I feel like there's a chance to still tell this story better, because I do think it is an incredibly fascinating story, and I think that goes a long way of why I recommend this movie, because the story is so fast. The real life story is incredibly fascinating, and there is a way, and perhaps like I pitched, the way is to set it in the aftermaths afterwards. And
I agree. All
these movies would be better if you did them, Cade. I totally agree with that.
Oh, thank you, Diane. I'm sure that was not said with any sort of sarcasm or
No, I totally agree. If you had done this movie, it would be.
You just said you wouldn't recommend it, and now you're very patronizingly saying that I could do it better. I feel like you should enthusiastically say.
I wouldn't recommend it, but if you had done that movie, I would.
Okay.
And again, I don't know if you saw my comment in the chat, but going back to Ebert, Siskel and Ebert, Ebert always said that they should not remake good movies, they should remake the bad ones to make them better.
Right.
That's
like,
very true.
why remake great movies? Good to great movies. They've been done. Great.
Yes, I agree. And I think
So,
that...
yes, please remake this one, Cade.
And the bling ring.
I don't know how you can really fix the bling ring, or if I would want to, but no, I did. I enjoyed it. If you're into, I mean, like, it goes a long ways if you're into just real life dramas. And I've said it before, I love family dramas, and I think this is almost the sort of one of the.
But wouldn't it be better if they saw the original series and actually?
Well, I don't know. I never saw the original series, so I would have a different.
You?
I have no idea.
Wasn't it you that said that they were gonna? I saw somewhere that they were gonna broadcast it or stream it or something in April 23rd, but I couldn't figure out if the article was old or not. Like if they were gonna do it in the future. I don't know, but I don't think it is available. I tried to get it off Amazon, The American Family, and it said it wasn't available in this country or something like that. It wasn't available here.
You might have to buy them as a physical set during like their pledge seasons. PBS.
No, they said it wasn't on. Yeah, no, it wasn't on. They never put it on DVD.
I saw that.
I read that somewhere.
I thought I read that like whenever this movie came out, that or during one, or maybe whenever it was some anniversary, they had put some sort of box set together.
Okay, maybe. Well, I think that's what wasn't available at this location or something like that is what I saw on Amazon. But I mean, I guess what I'm saying, Cade, is it is a fascinating story. Go back if you haven't seen the original. Go watch the original rather than this movie.
I mean, it was a big. I guess the show was a big deal. I mean, if like it was. I remember it. It was chosen as whenever talking about the divorce scene and the real thing, it was chosen as one of the top 100 TV moments by TV Guide. In particular, the quotes. There's a problem, and then him saying, "What's your problem?" Which I guess I don't feel like they played it as huge. I guess that was a huge cultural touchstone, that response. And then I kind of went back later, and they did play that again, but I don't know. Perhaps something in the real life scene that was bigger than the way it was reenacted in the movie. Yeah. I recommend it. I don't care. I think it's a perfect movie. No, but I do think the real life stuff was more. And then I guess I will give it, because I didn't really know what else to give it. It seems a little bizarre but it's just a film reel camera. That's it.
Okay.
It's good. It's a good little movie. I like family dramas. What can I say? And I love families that fall apart.
Watch the original.
But I also feel like they clipped out perhaps the most interesting parts. Right? Like, I don't know, I mean, I didn't see it, so maybe there are more interesting parts. I don't know. I feel like particularly the son would probably have more interesting sections to the story that they completely, cut out of the fact. I mean, they obviously did not go to Paris for that scene of him sitting out at a diner or whatever they call them there, a bistro, a cafe, or whatever. Was quite obviously not Paris, but I don't know. Okay. That was our opinions of the matter. So now we're going to head into preview time. Diane, are you ready for preview time?
I'm always ready for preview time.
Okay, and we're going to preview what is coming up next here on Double Feature Movie Club.
And now, preview time. When it comes to entertainment, you can't beat a good film. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
Oh, let's take a look at what's coming your way. Well, we have... I have to... Oh, boy. Okay,
horror movie 1 and horror movie 2.
So
the most violent year.
Well, yes. Wait a sec. We haven't announced them yet, Diane. So Diane, first off, we've been on a run of non-horror movies here on Double Feature Movie Club. Just wanted
2
to
weeks.
2 weeks.
Count them.
2 whole weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, and a lot of so I feel like it is time to return to our roots a bit. Our roots. Diane's first show was a double horror show, and she continued going. So I despite all odds. So our movies next week. One of them's not a horror film, it is called A Most Violent Year. It is a crime movie, I guess, or something. And it's Oscar Isaac, Jessica Chastain. Both of our movies are I think the tie-in is this was the 70s week, next week's 80s week. So Most Violent Year takes place in the 80s, and then the other one's like 80s sort of inspired. I don't think it actually takes place in the 80s, but so yeah, A Most Violent Year. Didn't you say someone wrote or directed it that was one of our previous ones? I don't remember what happened there.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, and I just clicked it off. Darn.
Oh, it was the guy who directed Margin Call.
That's right. Margin Call was his first movie.
Yes, so he did Margin Call, and then he did All Is Lost, which is that Robert Redford boat movie, and then he did A Most Violent Year, and then he did Triple Front, which was that Netflix Ben Affleck action adventure movie. So, and now he's going to do Kraven the Hunter for Sony, the Spider-Man villain.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating career. That doesn't make much.
It really is.
that's a bizarre. That's really kind of all over the place, huh? So yeah, we're watching A Most Violent Year, and he wrote and directed that. So, and it's we'll read it here. Oscar Isaac plays Abel Morales, the owner of a small heating oil company, who is stressed by the competitiveness in the oil trade and for having to secure costly loans to expand his business. There you go. That sounds fun. Business stuff.
Oil business stuff.
Oil business stuff.
Great.
How appropriate.
And then what's that streaming on, Diane?
HBO Max.
HBO Max. Well, good. That's very easy to find. So HBO Max, and then our second feature we're watching next week is called Beyond the Black Rainbow, which is a horror film, and these two are I probably should have said that up front.
Wait a minute. A Violent Year might wind up being a horror film. You have to wait and see.
You have to wait and see.
The oil industry.
Yeah. These are my most anticipated movies. Not to put too much of it. This was the week I was most looking forward to. So, we'll see if they live up to the hype. Beyond the Black Rainbow is also, I think, a slightly divisive film. So Diane might not. We don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it is. I don't know. I don't know what I could hate it too and be very disappointed. But next week, I believe Harrison's going to be on here, right? Diane, is that right? Is that who we said? Yes, Harrison.
It's bright. Is it Harrison?
It's Harrison. Harrison has jumped in and said he's going to do this. So we might be back in studio. We might not. We don't know. We'll figure it out. And that what's that on? Sorry, what's that? What's streaming is Beyond the Black Rainbow.
Okay, this one you probably have to go to Amazon to get it. It's this premium subscription.
It might be a Shudder.
Free.
I bet it's a Shudder.
Well, it's a Crackle and a.
Oh, it's Crackle.
It's on Pluto, Crackle, Plex.
So Pluto's free.
Yeah, Pluto's free. If you have it, Crackle's it's free on Crackle. Plex, it's free on there.
So it might be. Is it on Tubi?
No, doesn't show Tubi.
I'm gonna look.
But it might be.
A lot of those, like weirdly, like even though it might not show up because it is, if it's on Pluto, it oftentimes is on Tubi. So let me just check real soon because we love plugging Tubi on here.
Yeah, we love Tubi. There's all kinds of movies out on Tubi if you'd like just to go watch.
It is not on Tubi, so never mind. We will rescind our praise of Tubi.
This is an interesting, interesting description of this.
Mhm.
A heavily sedated woman with ESP tries to escape from a secluded commune where she's been held captive. Oh boy.
The science fiction horror film. Yes. We'll see.
Oh boy.
We will see. Great. That's been the 23rd episode of Double Feature Movie Club. 23, Diane. Can you believe it?
23.
23.
No, I can't. I can't believe it. I can't believe you bought me a camera
Uh-huh.
to plug into my computer.
You still haven't repaid the debt of me getting you a camera, I guess.
I had 23 of these. Yes, I am. I am so paid the debt. I have watched some really crappy movies for you.
Horror films alone.
Yeah.
Well,
But then, I did get the Cheddar Goblin, so yeah, that was the good part.
that was the good part.
Cheddar Goblin. Yeah.
Should have called him from Mandy. And Ava, thank you for joining us. We love it when you're here, and it is.
We do
It's
love
great
it when
fun.
you're here.
Mm-hmm.
It's great fun.
Yeah,
We have another one with Ava.
we do. We can't announce what those are yet, but we do have another one later in this season with Ava. So
I'm so glad.
Yay!
So glad to be back, Ava.
Diane likes having a friend. Usually agrees with her. Popcorn? Are you giving me popcorn? Throw it over. I want some popcorn.
throw it.
We don't all. Oops. There you go. We don't always agree. We did on the
not
last
always.
one. The thing would have been better if
Not
Cade would have
always.
done it. Yeah.
Oh, am I supposed to catch
That's
the?
a popcorn.
Okay, I catch it. That's only the podcast people listeners aren't going to get that joke. We caught popcorn in our mouths, so just to explain it.
Good
That's right.
Oh, missed it.
There's another one.
Missed
That
it.
was to the audience that can't see the last one.
Yeah.
Kate, I have to give you kudos for getting Diane on here because I remember her asking me if she should do it or asking my opinion. And at that point when she was asking me, she was not like gung-ho about it at all.
Yeah, no. I'm.
Whatever
I'm
you did to convince her.
He has another podcast that he does.
Yep. Yep.
It's
I
called
watched
Cade
you
and
on it.
Friends.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you know that I have more views than anyone else?
I believe it.
Her.
I believe it.
Yeah, her TikToks or whatever, her reels and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knew?
Who knew?
I did.
I didn't.
Kate did.
Yep.
Yeah, poor Ava's heard a lot of my stories, so what can
No,
I
I
say?
hadn't heard most of those. And you didn't tell the tornado story. You probably
No.
heard the
I have a
tornado
really
story,
good one.
Kate.
The one,
About that.
the farm shopping centers that you're talking about. Yeah, I think
The
With the couple
tornado
from New
story
York.
where she
she was.
she saved him.
Yes.
Well, not really.
Yes.
I mean, it was the driver of the Gene
Yes,
thing.
yes.
Which I do
Who actually
think
saved us all.
it is
Yes,
on
yeah.
our Patreon. I think she told that story on the Patreon. So if you want to hear this
Okay.
tornado story, you'll have to subscribe.
It's
to
well
it.
worth it. Subscribe to Patreon, everybody, to hear the tornado story. It's quite a story.
Yeah.
I didn't tell the entire Eric Clapton story, but the part that I did tell you have to pay for it too.
Yes. So there you go.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
You didn't tell
I
me
didn't tell
that,
the entire
Diane.
story. I just told part of it.
Did you tell the part I know?
No.
Oh, okay. Whoa, okay. Then
What can
Okay.
I say?
Yes.
We all
Oh,
remember-
slow
you can
hands.
say a lot. So could I, but I won't.
But you
I
won't
promise.
because you're my friend.
And I promised.
Hmm.
Poor Kate.
Yes.
Sorry, Kate.
That's fine. Just trying to wrap up a show here.
Just trying to end this. It's hard to do it with the two of us, for sure. So listen, everybody who's listening to this right now, regardless of what platform you're listening to us on, be sure and like us, hit all the buttons,
Mhm.
because we want to come back. I need a better camera. Cade needs a life.
Yeah, definitely.
We
I
need
appreciate
more
that.
movies that Ava can watch.
Yeah. Are you gonna
It would
watch
definitely
any?
be better for me.
You're gonna watch either one of those, Ava, next week?
Never the horror movie.
Uh-huh.
I'll never watch one. I'll research the other one and
Yeah.
see.
See, you might like it. I don't. Yeah, I don't. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know enough about it either. Well, great. That is our show, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Diane, for telling everyone to hit all the buttons, subscribe, like, and all that. Do all that. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.